Sorry, bear with me, I'm nearly there. Okay, is that all right for everybody? Great. So this is Brenda, by the way. She was a bat that I rescued earlier in February this year. She's Brenda, the BLE from Bolton, and she's kind of our cover girl at the moment. She has had some competition this year from another BLE that we have a great photo. We might save that one for an actual bat calendar. So first of all, essential kit. Really, honestly, truthfully, you can get away with very minimal stuff. I actually had to spend part of lockdown in Birmingham, and I didn't take any of my bat kit with me because I was not going to do bat care. And then obviously I got involved in bat care, and I didn't have any. I had like a pair of tweezers and a cardboard box, and that was pretty much what I started with. So what we're going to list here, it's great to have, but you can build it up over time. Don't be put off by, oh God, I have to get all of this stuff. Okay. Copy of the Bat Care guidelines. So obviously just go to their website. If you're in a veterinary practice, then I would urge you to request a hard copy and keep it on site just so you've got it to refer to. It does give you useful information on actual how to care for bats, but it's also got all sorts of the legislation side of things in there as well, so you know that you're doing things in line with the law. So yeah, that's definitely a good to have. Gloves, and yes, you're going to need different types of gloves depending on the kinds of species that you're handling. With pips, just latex or nitrile gloves are normally good enough. With something like a BLE, you're probably going to want to wear a couple of pairs, or a pair of the thick cotton gloves and then with the latex over the top. And then when you're getting up to something big like a Leisler's, then you need to be wearing leather gloves. Bat identification takes a little bit of time to learn. So if you're not sure what gloves you should be wearing for the bat that you have, a good way of going about it is to weigh it. If it's around the sort of 5 gram mark, it's probably a pip, or the teeth are going to be of a similar size, and so therefore latex. So yeah, just weigh the bat and go up on weight. I can send out some more details on that afterwards. I've got that written down somewhere. Secure box for collection. I've got some pictures of that in a minute. Yeah, rehydration solution. We used to use the Royal Canin sachets, but we found it to be incredibly wasteful. We were opening a sachet and only using a tiny bit. I know that some other groups do open a sachet, make up the whole batch and then freeze it sort of in ice cube trays, and then you can defrost a little bit at a time as you go. But personally, I live in a shared house, so I don't have space to do that in my freezer. So what I do now is I just make up a homemade formula, which is 3 level teaspoons of sugar and 1/4 teaspoon of salt to 1/2 litre of boiled water. Again, nudge me if you want that repeated, but you can find it online as well. Something to administer the rehydration. For the paintbrush, we tend to use we buy them brand new, so they've never been used for nail varnish, but nail varnish brushes. I've got some pictures coming up, but they're very sort of short and stubby, so they're much better at delivering it to a tiny bat than say an artist's brush, but an artist's brush will work as well. And then the pipettes that we use are teeny tiny. You get them from a laboratory. We get ours from Alpha Labs, So again, if you're from a different group and you haven't seen these tiny ones before, they're fantastic. And shout if you want a link of where to get those from. Or you can just use a good old-fashioned syringe, so especially if you're in a veterinary practice. If you put an IV cannula onto a normal 1 ml syringe, then that will give you the really sort of fine point that you need to be aiming it at the tiny mouth. Mealworms and tweezers, we were asked about that earlier. So yeah, mealworms are the main food that we give them. I'm going to go into that in more detail in a bit. But yeah, you're going to end up decapitating a lot of mealworms if you get into bat care. So be ready for that. Calipers or ruler. So again, we're going to get into biometrics a bit more later, but sort of the two main things that we are looking for with bats is how much they weigh, and also the length of their right forearm. That can tell us a lot about the species of bats, but it also tells us, for example, perhaps the age, or it's a factor in identifying that, I should say. And it's information that is sort of collated by the group, and it tells us a lot about bats in terms of conservation and that sort of thing. So right forearm length, you can get calipers, again there's a picture of those, but a good old-fashioned ruler does the job. Scales, like I say, we want to know the weight. Just little digital scales, you can pick those up for about £5 online. The suitable housing, again there's pictures to follow, so I won't go into that too much now. Heat pads, there's various different ways of doing that. You can get the kind of heat pad that you would use for exotics, or you can get little hand warmers, like rechargeable hand warmers. I tend to keep one of those in the car. And the other one is a hot hand, which again I've got a picture coming up. Tape and masking tape. So this is in my essential car kit, because when you ask the member of public, is the bat in a secure box, they will always tell you yes, and then it's never in a secure box. So it's good to have some masking tape just so that you can make sure that the bat doesn't get out in your car. Also, it's very good, it's, you know, obviously we hope it doesn't happen, but should there be a crash, and anybody is, you know, like the fire brigade have to get involved and have a look, it's good to have labelled up the box to say that there's a bat in there, or however many bats are in there, so that they know that they need to be looking out for a wild animal as well. So if you've got some masking tape, you can just stick that on your box and write it on. So yeah, this is some of the kit that I was just telling you about. So gloves, these, oh, I haven't got my pointer on, bear with me. Laser pointer. So yeah, tweezers, gloves, self-explanatory. This is you can see the really short stubby nail brushes, they're brilliant, and these really fine-tipped pipettes. Scales, little tub to put the bat in, and I find that if I wrap it up in a little bit of tissue first of all, and then put the lid on, they tend to stay a lot calmer. Start collecting milk bottle lids, because that's what the best thing to put water in for them. If you're in the car though, do be sure to take the water out before you start transit, because you don't want the bat getting wet and cold. And then yes, these are sort of the digital calipers, which are, you know, very accurate for measuring right forearm length. So some examples of the collection boxes. These wooden boxes are, they're quite old-fashioned now. We don't tend to use them so much. They're absolutely great from the bat's point of view. You can see it's got this mesh on the inside, even a bit on the roof there, so that they can roost comfortably, little cloth for them to hide in. It's nice and dark, so they love it. But these have to be specially made. They're very heavy, and they are a bit of a pain to clean thoroughly, obviously, with it being porous material. So they are going sort of more out of fashion. People tend to be using this sort of box now. So, you know, it's obviously quite simply, you've just got some tissue at the bottom. That tissue actually extends up that side, and then with this cloth over the top, so that the bat can, again, get upside down and feel more comfortable. If this wasn't for photo purposes, then I would actually do the same thing on this front side as well as a bare minimum, because the one thing I don't like about these boxes is when the bats actually get to the plastic, they seem to get quite stressed out by it, and they'll just be scratching away at it with their thumbs, whereas they settle a lot faster if they're on a bit of tissue, something like that. And yeah, a little cloth to hide in. And then with any of the collection boxes, I always then cover them over as well, to make the bat feel more secure. Going on to my next slide. There we go. So yes, mealworms, lovely. As the slide says, we feed them this because it's basically the only commercially available insectivorous food that the little hairy swearies will regularly eat. I had a bat earlier this year with metabolic bone disease, and I was advised to get calci worms and wax worms and all of these sorts of things to try and get his calcium intake up enough and try and correct the bone disease. I ended up giving them to somebody that keeps reptiles because the bats just would not eat most of them. You do have to teach them how to eat mealworms, because obviously it's not their natural diet. They're never flying around. But once they've got the hang of it, they seem to eat them quite happily. You can get mealworms in different sizes, minis and standards. It's normally easier to start them off with the minis, but then the standards are sort of just, it's more convenient to use them, because if you're going to feed dead ones rather than live worms, it's a lot less decapitating if you're using the bigger ones. So we keep them in oats, and we give them Weetabix as well. Mealworms are one of these issues where that I don't think that there's ever going to be a consensus reached about what is the best way to keep them. So this is one of those things, different groups have different ideas, and you might want to speak to your own coordinators about it. There is one argument that says you don't need to supplement them for calcium. Bats have a very high calcium need, by the way, so it's more similar to reptiles than to other normal mammals. I think it's about a third more than most mammals require. And somebody was saying that, well, oats have loads of calcium in them, so that should be sufficient. It's not actually the case, because there's also, I can't remember what the other thing in oats is called. There's something else in oats which actually stops the calcium from being absorbed from them. So we supplement ours with NutriGrub, which is commercially available, and it's cheap. It's got various different nutrients in it as well as the calcium, but it is vital that some kind of supplementation is given, because mealworms have very little nutritional content, and without the proper nutrition, the bat isn't going to do well, obviously. And like I say, I had one with metabolic bone disease earlier this year, which unfortunately had to be put to sleep. So diet is like really important. So along with the NutriGrub, we also feed fresh fruit and veg. And again, as it says on the slide, we give Royal Canin pup powder for juveniles. It's sort of, as we're weaning them off milk, and onto the mealworms, we tend to use that then. Other groups use the pup powder all of the time, which is absolutely fine. The only word of warning that I'd give there is if it's very hot weather, it can start to smell really bad because there's a milk element to it, so it goes off. So if you're wondering what the dodgy smell is or why your mealworms smell a bit dodgy, that's probably it. So yes, we supplement them every 2 to 3 days, and then we clean them out a couple of times a week. With mine, I sieve them to get rid of their dirt, their waste. Vacuuming might sound ridiculous, but because it's an exoskeleton, as they grow, they shed the exoskeletons, and you can end up with a box full of just these very light little cast off skins. So if you get your hoover and hold it quite far away from the tub initially and then move it gradually closer, you'll reach a point where you just suck up all of these casts, but you don't suck up all of your mealworms. And then you will get some black ones, some ones that die off and turn black, so you just kind of have to go through manually and pick the worst of those out. Right, I was dead impressed with myself for putting some videos into this, but we tried it earlier and the videos wouldn't play. So if you just bear with me 1 second and I will get it up manually instead. Are you only still seeing a portion of my screen? Can you only see a bit of a hand at the moment?
It's mostly to the right, but I think that's the whole video that we can see.
Yeah, it's not properly positioned, but it's actually fine for what you need to see. So this is a little juvenile that I went to collect earlier this year. She was incredibly dehydrated, so I was giving her rehydration on the spot. You can see when the pipette's gone away, she's actually like looking for it, licking my fingers. She was so thirsty. So I think she was about 2.5 grams at this point, something like that. Right. I think it is a couple of videos coming up now. Ooh. Okay, now I've moved the videos to later, that's fine. So reasons that we might get called out to a bat. As Lynn was saying before, if a bat is out in daytime, there is probably something wrong with it. So yeah, we need to investigate. This poor one, it was found on the wall, then it went away again, and then it came back, and then they left it for a bit. I think it was left for 4 days before we actually got to it, and it had serious open fractures. So the poor thing must have been suffering quite badly, had to be put to sleep immediately. Yeah, the number one villain in bat care is cats, unfortunately. I do love them, but I don't like what they do to wildlife. So that's going to be the thing that you get most regularly. It may be other forms of trauma that have happened. Contamination, very often it's just unknown substance. But I think the other one that we see most commonly is the flypaper one, which is incredibly sticky. We have to give them baths for that, but I'll be going into that in next week's presentation. Very often, and especially during juvenile season, at the point where bats are taking their first flights and figuring stuff out, I think they see the window, an open window, for example, and think, oh, I wonder what's in there, that's probably a good place to hide, and then are confused when they're inside like a massive office building or something. So you will just get quite a lot that have just flown into a house. A lost pup is, you know, when mum has gone off, because mum goes off not just for hunting, but sometimes they will actually go to another roost for 24 hours, have a bit of a break from the kids. And the pup may start to look for its mum and then wanders off, and they can fall out of their roosts. This year's been particularly difficult. We seem to have had a lot of pups that were falling actually internally into the house and coming through sort of into living rooms or bedrooms. In previous years, a licensed roost inspector would have gone out and checked that roost and probably blocked up that hole to make sure that the bats weren't, you know, falling down and ending up starving to death or something. But because of COVID this year, we haven't been able to do it. So this is one of the reasons we've had so many juveniles this year. Sometimes we've had like 5 or 6 from the same roost. So yeah, that's been pretty crazy. Like I was saying, with the bats going into houses, juveniles on their first flight they can have all sorts of problems. Very often they'll have a flight and then they haven't, you know, they'll land and they haven't got enough energy to get off the ground again. And it's times like that we have to intervene and feed them up and send them on their way again. And yes, obviously disturbed roosts, not necessarily in houses, that can be like old trees that have fallen, something like that. But quite often it is because of building work with a disturbed roost. So, taking the bat call. I'm only going to, oh, sorry, one sec, I need to admit somebody. I'll only go through the bat call briefly because, like I say, if you're new to Bat Care, it's unlikely that the bat call will be coming directly to you unless you are in an area where there isn't sort of much support from the group. Like I said, the way that it normally happens, from member of public finding a bat through to it ending up in your hands, is that the member of public will go, I found a bat, I don't know what the hell to do. They'll look on the internet. That should take them to the Bat Care helpline. The Bat Care helpline will take details and give advice, and then they will see who is in the area. So as we were saying, Lynn and John in our group are registered with BCT, so one of those would get the call, and then we put that onto our WhatsApp group and we see who's available to take that call. Other teams may organise it differently, but that's the process. In terms of what we need to do, why aren't you working? There we go. Sorry about that. So yes, like I say, it can come through the call can come through BCT, this sort of thing. You need to know where it is it safe? Normally we would want, like I say, the member of public to put the bat into normally a shoebox with some holes in the lid, make sure that it's secure. But then sometimes members of public will also just still leave that on the floor with a cat looking at it and wondering what that smell is and what that sound is. So yeah, there's different things to be sure of with safety. So yeah, secure box, closed lid, water in a cloth. Then we want to get a bit of a history. Obviously, if there's any signs of injury, then we know we need to get somebody out, as soon as possible. But if it looks happy and healthy, then there's not quite so much rush. You take the details. We've got a form coming up later, which prompts you with the details that you need. And yes, if you can't get to it, don't be afraid to ask the owner, member of public, sorry, if they will bring the bat to you or meet you halfway. I think the furthest away that I had this year was nearly an hour away, and it would, you know, a 2-hour trip would have been massive. But yes, the member of public came and met me halfway, so that made a huge difference. And of course, this is where ambulance drivers can really help us out as well. Okay, as I was saying before, in terms of car kit, you really don't need very much apart from your PPE and a box. I've built this up over a period of years, but this is what I like to have with me at the moment. So yeah, from left to right, this is a cloth to cover the box over with once the bat's all in there and secured, labelled up, water's been taken out. Bat detector, because especially if you are collecting in the evening, it's good to just have a bit of a listen, and you can learn more about the bats that are in the area. Is there an active roost still, that sort of thing. This is the rechargeable hand warmer that I was telling you about, and then there's a nice sock to pop it in to make sure that it's not getting too hot, not going to burn the bat. Vets and nurses amongst us will be very familiar with this. It's hot hand, so it's just nitrile glove filled up with water, and then you can just microwave that. And if they're good thick nitrile gloves, you can reuse them a few times as well. And again, another nice little fleece to wrap it in. If you're going for a local collection, then you can just warm it up at home before you go. If you're going further away, you might have to ask the member of public to reheat it for you, but just be sure to give it a wipe down with antiviral spray or similar. This is what I've got down here. Yeah, be really COVID aware. Bunch of leaflets. As Lynn was saying in her talk, this is one of our best chances to educate the members of the public, and giving them some leaflets can be really helpful. There's also the rescue form here that I was telling you about, and this is Maggie Brown's bats and cats leaflet, because obviously owners love their cats and they don't want to think anything bad of them, but when they've got a pretty mangled bat in their hands, they kind of have to acknowledge that, okay, not great. And that's when they're more likely to take the advice on board of keep getting their cats in before dusk, and keeping them in overnight to help bats and other wildlife. This is my array of gloves, everything from nitrile to a very fetching pair of pink leather gloves. This was when I went to collect Lisla's, and I didn't have leather gloves at the time. And another carer's mum, who works in a charity shop up the road, very kindly nipped down with yeah, this lovely pair, and I've kept them ever since. Pipette, pen and paintbrush, again, self-explanatory. That's the rehydration formula, the Royal Canin one. Like I say, we don't actually use it anymore, but I put it in just for demonstration purposes. And then your PPE. Okay, I hope everyone's still with me. I can't see all of you anymore, really, because I've had to minimise you a bit, but yeah, hope you're all okay. How am I doing for time as well? Yeah, we're okay. We're okay. So these are the nets, or some people call them meshes, that I was talking about earlier. They're often sold online as butterfly enclosures. Some people set them up vertically, some people set them up horizontally. It doesn't make a huge difference. We choose horizontal, mainly because when bats aren't flying around, they do just clamber around, and it's just giving them a bit more floor space, and it gives you more of an opportunity to put some environmental enrichment in there for them. So we've got a couple of different types of cloths and hung in different ways. I find that they tend to always prefer the fleecy or fluffy ones. They're divas, really. Bats are divas. So this is the kind of net that we would use, say, for a bat that was recovering. So it hasn't got a huge deal going on it. We need to, if it's a bat that's been injured or is ill, we need to make sure that we're keeping it clean. So everything's kept quite simple. All we've got in here is a couple of little hidey holes for them to feel a bit more secure, water, and then these transparent dishes are very heavy bottomed. So if you're going to use live mealworms, you need to make sure that they're not going to escape. So that you need to make sure that the bat isn't going to tip the dish over. So you can either use something like this, or you can use just like a normal plastic tub and put some stones in it to weigh it down. If I'm feeding dead mealworms, I do tend to scatter them about, and then the bat has to hunt for them. So yes, what have we got? Cover it once the bat's in and all settled down, cover it over to keep it a bit dark in there for them. They're very often going to need a heat source, especially if they're recovering. It's important with the heat source to provide a temperature gradient. So that means you don't really want a heat pad that's covering the whole of a surface, because the bat needs to be able to get away from it and choose where it's comfortable. You can't really see on this photo, but the heat pad that I've got on top of the mesh covers about 2/3, and then they can get as close or as far away from it as they want to. Yeah, so I said nets for juveniles or overwintering bats differ. Something that we've really been looking into, and just starting with this year really, is providing a lot more environmental enrichment, especially for juveniles. If they've come in when they're very young, they may never have actually seen a tree at that point. You know, if they were roosting in a loft, but they're going to be going out, they're going to need to know how to hunt, they're going to need to know what these things look like. So we're just in the process of sort of creating little wooden roosts for them, different things for them to explore, lots of different wood basically at the moment. But again, juveniles kind of a whole massive other topic, and something that we touch on it next week, but really they need their own whole presentation, because it's a huge commitment taking on juveniles long term. Live or dead food, there's advantages to both. Dead food, you tend to need to kill the mealworms initially when you're training the bats to eat them. But obviously, if you can get them to eat the live mealworms, then it means you haven't got to spend lots of time decapitating them. It also means that they keep much longer. The dead ones really need to be removed in 24 to 48 hours, depending on the condition that they're in. So you can have a lot of waste if you are killing them. But it's just a question of whether you can get the bat to eat the live ones or not. Cleaning them out regularly, it's going to depend a little bit on the bats that you have. I've had 2 bats in together earlier this year that I'd open their mesh each day and it looked like an absolute murder scene. And then I had another mesh that had 4 bats in it and they kept everything nice and tidy. So it is going to vary, but as a rough sort of guideline, we would say to change the cloths at least once a week. I've got kitchen towel on the bottom. I change that pretty much daily. The cloths change about once a week. Like I said, even if they look quite clean, the bat's probably been urinating on them a lot. So it's worth just changing them. And then the mesh itself, you're going to want to give that a clean every couple of weeks or so. There is sort of also an argument that I've heard before of kind of like, well, have you seen what bat roosts are like? They're absolutely disgusting and full of guano and they're nasty, so like we don't have to be that vigilant. I disagree with that personally. If a bat has come into our care, that's for a reason. And if it's ill or if it has an injury, then we have to maintain good hygiene with the bat. Also, in a roost situation, bats move on from roosts when they are uninhabitable anymore. The bat that we have doesn't have the choice to move on from here, so we have to keep it clean. And yes, last but not least, lock the doors. This is really just, for me, it's more of a check for myself to make sure that I've definitely closed the zip up properly. I have lost a bat once before, and it was because the zips weren't quite properly closed, and they will get through a tiny gap. So you do need to be careful. Some people use like sandwich tie twisty things to twist them together instead, but these are just a bit more reusable. Okay, so you've gone out, you've got your bat, what are you going to do with it? I always recommend examining the bat at the scene. If it has got very serious injuries and needs putting to sleep, then you can take it straight to the vet. Normally, I would ask the member of public if there's a secure room that I could go into to do that. These days I do it in my car, which so far has been fine, but I am a little bit terrified of one wriggling free and getting under the seat or something, because you're never getting it back again. First aid measures, as you saw with the little pup that I had earlier, sometimes they need rehydration at the scene, sometimes they need a heat source straight away. We want to know what species, as like Lynn was saying earlier, so that we know what kind of PPE to be wearing, and it's also going to alter how we might treat the bat as well. Yeah, depending on the condition of the bat, other checks can wait until later. When you get the bat home, you're going to want to do a very thorough examination of it, but just giving it a quick once over in the car is definitely recommended. If you've got time, obviously if the bat is injured and it's in pain, tell the owner that the member of public, sorry, I keep saying owner because of being a vet nurse for so many years. Tell the member of public that you'll be in contact to get the other details from them. But if you've got the time, then it's great to have a chat with the owner, get some history. And yeah, sometimes the owners might have seen the bat do behaviour that you haven't witnessed, like it might have fitted or something like that. I've had that a couple of times. And yeah, we want to know if we're going to be able to release this bat back here, so we need as much information as possible as well. Very often, members of the public will say, oh yes, I do see bats flying around, and that can give you a good indication of what you need to be, where you need to be going. Cats, you may have a bat that has hidden injuries. If it's been bitten, it might not be obvious, but if a cat is involved, then it's very likely going to need antibiotics. So yeah, find out if they've got cats or if there's lots of cats in the area. Very important, of course, make sure that nobody has been bitten or scratched by the bat, and that includes pets as well. Because if they have, as a precautionary measure, we would want to be getting the post-exposure rabies vaccine on board just as a precaution. And ensure the consent form is signed. So the Maggie Brown form that you've got coming up in a bit has a box on it for that. The reason that we ask for it, I know it's a wild animal, but I've had situations in the past, not through the bat group, but again, when I was working as a veterinary nurse, where we've had wildlife brought in by a member of the public. It was obviously in a very bad state, needed to be euthanized. The member of public's come back to us and asked what's happened to it. We've told them, unfortunately, it was put to sleep, and they've gone mad and said, I never would have handed it over to you if I'd known that that's what you were going to do. I'm going to sue you or get you arrested or something. So if you've just got something that is signed by them, it covers us from that point of view. And it makes them aware as well. You know, it's good to make them aware. You are signing the care over to us. We're kind of the experts with this. And obviously we're going to do the best thing for the bat, but sometimes that might be put to sleep, unfortunately. Okay, we've already touched on this a bit. We've got the leaflets. If the bat isn't injured, you can potentially show the bat to the person that's found it. Again, obviously making sure that you are observing social distancing rules, that sort of thing. We've already covered that. Look for roost and signs of bat activity. Sometimes it can be really, really subtle, like just one bit of poo on a wall. But especially if it's during pup season and there's an active maternity roost, you can see a lot of poo around the entrance to it, and it can be really obvious. So even if you feel that you're not experienced and don't know what you're looking for, have a scout around anyway. You might spot something. Obviously we'll give you training and support and tell you things to look out for, but it's the only way that you're ever going to learn how to identify a roost, is just start looking. Yep, so as I was saying as well, just let them know what we're planning to do with the bat. Normally they're very interested, and it's good to give them updates as well. Yeah, let them know that we want to release it back if that's possible, and involve the finder. Yes, I'm just gonna look at my notes on this one as well. So it was interesting that BCT did some research, and involving members of the public with an update and with the release has a huge impact on the public's feedback and future interest in bats. So within this survey, 71% of the members of public with previously negative views of bats changed their mind to positive during bat rescue. 83% of people that were neutral changed to positive. 17% actually got involved post-rescue, including 12% that had initially been negative. So I mean, it's just amazing that is the effect that this can have. You can go from being scared of bats to then actively being involved in a bat group. So yeah, it is definitely worth getting the members of public on board. That's what we've just been saying, demystify bats. So, record keeping, bit of a boring bit and quite straightforward. Yeah, try and have a bit of a system. Just scribbling things on a scrap of paper and leaving it in the car, it's going to get confusing when it comes to time to submit your bat records to your group. We do have to submit records, obviously, because of them being a protected species. There's lots of reasons it's useful, but it is also essential. So yeah, helps us care for the bat, helps us learn, evidence of proper care, as Lynn was saying earlier, it's proving that there's a reason that you've got this protected species in your house. A standardised form keeps things simple for everybody. Get the member of public to sign it. GDPR can be a tricky one. If you're outside, if you're in the Nottingham group, it's something that we can talk through how we handle that. But if you're not within the group, then do speak to your local group about what they do with regards to GDPR. By the way, for those that don't know, is the General Data Protection Regulation, which is about making sure that people's details are kept safe and securely. Yeah, and then most groups have an online form these days for submitting the records to, and it's good to get those in as soon as possible. Even if the bat is in your care long term and you don't know what the outcome is going to be yet, you can always update later. But if you get the records in sooner rather than later, it helps us know what's going on and keeping a track of group activity. So here is the form that I keep referring to. Let you have a lovely look at that for a second while I have a sip of tea. So I don't tend to fill all of this in on site, but certainly just getting the date, the details of who it was found by. If it's been brought to you by somebody different, there's a section there for that. A quick description of the circumstances and getting them to sign it. And again, there's a thing here that says, have they been bitten or scratched? So that's good. There's a quick reference list here for when you're checking the bat over. But I tend to fill in a lot of this form when I get home. It's sort of more this bit that's pressing when you're on site. So, home time. We've already said about secure boxes. The other thing that I didn't mention earlier is that ideally strap the box in. You can use, an external strap of some kind or whatever, but seat belts work perfectly fine. Again, you don't want to have to do an emergency stop and the bat ends up on the windscreen. Full examination when you get home, like I say, there's lots more on a thorough examination in next week's presentation. But yeah, as a quick guide, I tend to with a bat, I will start at the head and work my way through it, and check wings from both sides. In fact, I do have a video on this. We'll come back to that in a minute. So yeah, if there's no obvious or serious injuries, then make sure that they're warm, they're comfortable, they're rehydrated. You can try offering them a bit of food, but if they're quite stressed, then just leave them quietly for a while, let them settle down, and try them with some food later on. Yeah, ideally in the evening. Gut-loaded mealworms will be our preference. If you're in a veterinary practice, then something like AD can be given to them on a little paintbrush, or you can use a cotton bud if that's all you've got available. Cotton buds, by the way, aren't great for long-term use because the threads can get caught in their teeth, and there is some concern that if you were to always feed off a cotton bud, we don't know if that's getting sort of wrapped around their teeth, or whether it's impacting internally. It's not ideal, but for a one-off or a few of it would be fine. So yeah, AD is okay, or at a push you can even give them a bit of cat food, Jay. You can try them with some pup dog milk. It's if they're taking liquids but not food, then it's a good way of getting some nutrition into them. It does have to be the Royal Canin pup dog milk. Other brands aren't suitable. It's all to do with the lactose content. Various things have been tried over the years, and it keeps changing, unfortunately, because we find something that works and then it goes off the market. But at the moment, Royal Canin is the only one that's suitable. They can take some time to feed, so be patient, and most importantly, make sure that they are fully revved before you start feeding them. For those of you that are new, revving is, they vibrate very, very quickly to warm up. It feels lovely holding a revving bat. I really like it. But yes, they if they aren't fully warmed up, A, they're probably not going to eat very well, and B, they're not going to digest very well. First aid is next week. Cat attack, like we say, most likely going to need analgesia and antibiotics. Once you've sorted your bat out, you can get your records in. And yeah, liaise with your team and decide on your treatment plan for your bat moving forwards. And update your member of public. So some more videos. I'll try once more to see if it will play within the slide. If someone can, Lynn, if you can give me a thumbs up or down whether it's working for you or not, and if not, I'll go back to the other player. No, this is what it did last time.
No, it's not.
No, okay. Give me 1 sec. Can you see that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Not that hungry, I'll just take 2 at once. Oh, sorry, I don't know what happened there. We were pretty much at the end of that video anyway.
Georgia has just asked, what sort of bat was that?
That is a juvenile pipistrelle. I can't remember off the top of my head whether she was common or a soprano. I think she's a common. And I was going to show you another video of a different bat feeding. So I'll post the girl Brenda again.
That's not playing anything, Alex.
Oh.
There we go. That's working fine now.
But it is kind of adorable in a disgusting sort of way. More, give me more. Nom, nom, nom. God, it's determined to play that one, isn't it? Okay, it won't let me not play that one. So you enjoy this one for the second time, and I'll just try and sort out my technical difficulties. Right, let me just see what's coming up next before I... Right. Sorry about this, folks. that good enough?
Yep, that looks okay.
Thank you. Yeah, so some more on examination. You want to ideally check the box at the bat while it's still in the box. You're looking for demeanour. Is it moving properly? Is there anything that's sort of asymmetrical? Is it going round in circles? That sort of thing. Check for the obvious injuries first of all, because if you find something that is obvious, put to sleep, you don't want to start stretching it out and prodding and poking it to find out all of these different things. Get it euthanized first of all, and then we can sort everything else out afterwards. As I was saying, have a system. I tend to go from top to bottom and from front to back. You're looking for problems with, well, everything listed there. I don't need to read them all out. I am just getting aware of the fact that I'm running out of time and I've still got a lot of slides to get through, so I will have to speed things up a bit. Dehydration, emaciation, all of the things listed here are all things that we are going to be covering in next week's session, basically. So hold fire for that one. I did a bat exam. Let's see if we can get that to play. One sec. I'm gonna want the sound up for this one and then I'll restart it. Oh, okay, we haven't missed anything.
You'll need to turn the sound up more on it, Alex. Can't quite hear it.
That's full volume.
Yeah, that's not really coming through, so you need to describe what's happening.
I will turn it off and, yeah, talk through it instead. So I was just saying that I'm looking, you know, we're looking at his eyes. There's no discharge, anything like that. There's no obvious injuries. He's opening his mouth for us. That gives us a chance to make sure that his teeth are okay. They can sometimes, if they've had sort of some kind of head trauma, they can get a dislocated jaw or broken jaw. I was putting my hand over him just then because I was trying to calm him down. I'd already given him an examination and weighed him that evening, and then I thought, actually, I should have done that on video. So he was already a bit fractious by the time that I got him. So this is another way of holding them. Like I say, you need to be examining the front and the back. So if you sort of hold them with your thumb on top to keep them under control, you can then, if you support the wing, slowly extend it so that you can be checking the wing membrane and checking the bones. It's terrifying the first time you handle a bat because they are so small and they seem so fragile, but they are very resilient. Normally I would check, like I say, the front and back of both wings, but because he was getting stressed out, I just did the back on one side and the front on the other side. Yeah, holding it up to the light so you can see if there's any tiny puncture wounds in there or any blood spots, any broken bones. The venation in the wing as well can help us with ID. Having a look at the back end, they particularly dislike this bit, but their wing membrane and their tail membrane is actually all joined up in one, and you need to make sure that isn't ripped either, or he hasn't got a broken tail, that sort of thing. So if possible, you do want to just open that membrane out, but they will sort of clamp it shut like a dog would clamp its tail between its legs. So yeah, examining the abdomen, making sure there's not puncture wounds, checking the sex as well, and their genitalia can actually tell us quite a lot in terms of what species it is. So yeah, be prepared to look at a lot of pictures of bat willies. If there are puncture wounds, like I say, you might not see puncture wounds themselves. This is just him saying goodbye. There we go. If there are puncture wounds there, you might not see the wound itself, and brushing your finger over the bat, you might suddenly feel like a harder spot, which is clotted blood, that sort of thing. Right, I'm gonna really speed up. So this was a bat that had pneumothorax. It had been bitten by a cat, and then the air from its lungs is escaping into the surrounding tissue. And this was it after it had been deflated. So these are our most common injuries. And like I say, this is just a quick overview of the sorts of things that you can expect to see next week. Blood and diarrhea obviously aren't conditions, but it's just good things to be looking out for in terms of the condition. Age, again, more on this next week. With juveniles, let me get my pointer up. I appreciate that my screen share looks a bit dodgy at the moment, but again, just time. It's this area here at the joints. You can see that that's transparent there. That's the growth plate, effectively. So this is one of the best ways of telling the age of a bat. You'll also see that its wings are in pristine condition, and bats do just get all kinds of little scars as they're older, so that's another good sign for age. As I've said, I think PowerPoint did something weird when it cropped this one, because it's supposed to say that there's like an obvious penis in this picture, and unless I'm dumb, I think it's cropped it badly, but I just couldn't find another good picture in time last night. Oh, sorry, I should have warned you of that one. There's a nasty slide coming up, so look away now if you're a bit squeamish. This is the worst one. This is the last dead bat in the presentation. This was a cat attack. As you can see, there's broken bones in numerous places, torn wings. There's all sorts going on here. The poor thing was an obvious put to sleep. So yes, considerations. We have to think about the ethics. We have to think about the distress that we're going to put the bat through in order to get it back to healthy. And is it fair to do that? What's the long-term prognosis? Is it going to be releasable? If not, should we be doing it? Is it the best thing for the bat? Personally, the only bats that I feel comfortable about keeping as education bats, well, so far, the only ones that I've met are ones that came into captivity very, very young, and have basically grown up in that situation and know no different. Some bats can be really stressy in captivity. So if it's going to take, if it's a full wing tear that's going to take 9 months to heal, we have to think, is it fair on the bat? Yeah, a note on the legalities of things. Formal diagnoses can only be made by a qualified veterinary surgeon. And this is one of the reasons why I've really been sort of reaching out to veterinary practices, because it's a very difficult situation where they're the only people that can diagnose and prescribe, but they don't know very much about that particular animal. So really hoping to bring that together. But yes, it is tempting if you have some leftover Metacam in the fridge, just sort of go, well, I'll give it a drop of that. But that is illegal. It does have to be prescribed by a vet. So yeah, we now have a vet on our WhatsApp group, which is brilliant. She helps us out a lot now. And yes, euthanasia, sad as it is, should always be an option. It's not failing to put it to sleep. Sometimes it is the kindest thing. And the prospect of euthanasia has to be revisited sometimes, time and time again. You think about has a chance, and then as it's going on, you realise it's not improving or it's not going to be releasable. And so further down the line, you might have to put it to sleep. So you do have to keep asking yourself that question. This is the bit that we like, or one of the bits that we like. So basically, this is saying that we have to make sure that that bat is A, going to survive, and B, have a decent quality of life. If we release one and we're not really sure, we're basically abandoning that animal, and that it's not only is it not okay, it is illegal. So we want to make sure, are they the correct weight? We want to measure their right forearm length again for record keeping purposes. Obviously, if it's a juvenile and it's grown, then that's going to have changed from start to finish of care. Are they self-feeding? Are they displaying natural behaviours? Test flying, again, we'll come onto that much more next week, but they need to be able to sustain flight, because if they can't hunt. As we were just saying. Yeah, suitable weather and time of day. We normally release at dusk, and it can't be too cold or too windy or raining. We've already covered releasing the same place if it is safe to do so. So I know the next slide is another video. Right, I'll get my screen sorted and I'll start it again because that's too quick. So you've got to be quick because he goes quickly. And then as you see, there's two of them. This release was amazing. It was earlier this year. The bat had just been found in a light fixture sort of thing. There was nothing wrong with it. It was very angry, very sweary. So it was released the same day. Before I'd even opened the box, that other bat was circling around me, like really close to my head, like when I've tried to reunite a juvenile and its mum. And they were off straight away. So I don't know what the relationship between those two bats were, but it was just, yeah, it was an amazing release. Loved it. So that's us done. Simple as that.
Mike, could you just admit Paddy, please? I think he's just caught.
Yeah, he's already in.
He's in, is he? Lovely, thank you.
Right, I'll stop sharing my screen.
Marvellous. So a few questions have come through already. So I'll go through them, and John, Alex, or Lynn just pipe in. Gina's asked, I'm always worried about overheating bats with snuggle safes. Any tips?
My thing is make sure that they're wrapped up in cloths well. They can be very hot when you first heat them up, but just keep putting more layers of cloth on until you feel it's okay. And like I say, if you're going to, like, snuggle safes are quite big in relation to the size of enclosure that you normally have. I would say a snuggle safe in a mesh would be fine, because the bat can get as close or as far away from it as it wants. but in a travel box it's probably too big. I'd probably use a hot hand or something instead.
Excellent. So it looks like a few people are running off now. Are there any
sorry,
sort of
I know I didn't leave time for questions.
Are there any points, ending points that you and Lynn want to make before before a good chunk of people leave, and we'll do the rest of the questions then?
I just wanted to say thank you so much to everybody for attending. I've been blown away. Yeah, it's been absolutely great. And please do get in touch with us afterwards. Please do come back next week. And if you've enjoyed it, do feel free to drop by our website and by the donate page, or give us a shout on social media. We're on Twitter. I think it's @NotSpats Group. We're on Facebook. So yeah, don't be a stranger.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks. I'd like to thank everybody as well. It's been great and really positive to see all the comments. I wanted to mention as well, because we didn't at the start, to thank Lincolnshire Bat Group, because they stepped in and offered a donation to cover the extra cost of the Zoom meeting, because we had to pay extra to allow extra people to join in. So big thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much for that.
Yeah, so that's been great. Thank you.
Excellent. I'll add that in the next couple of days, there should hopefully be a link to a recording sent out to everyone there. But you've also got another one next week, Alex. Alex and Lynn, if you just want to quickly summarise what's happening then.
Yeah, so next week we're going to go more into the assessment of the bat, more into the care of injured bats, and yes, the treatments, the common injuries you can expect to see and how we deal with them, basically.
Marvellous.
But I'm happy to stick around and answer questions. If anybody who has asked questions is still here, that's fine. But no worries if not. Like I say, you can always contact us on email or whatever.
Cool. I've got already a long list of questions for us to get through. I just thought it'd be a good idea to cover those final points before people left.
Thank you.
The first one, which is also the most recent one, Danielle's asked, thanks for the workshop. Will next week's workshop be the same Zoom link? We'll be sending out a fresh Zoom link, hopefully on the same one, but you'll get an email in the next couple of days with the new Zoom link, and hopefully with a link to the recording of this session as well. So keep an eye on your inboxes, might be a couple of days. Marvellous. Okay, so Amy has asked in questions, if using an IV catheter to provide oral support, what gauge is best? Was taught 22 grams or 42 grams. Oh, sorry, I'm assuming it's grams, 22G or 24G. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a huge amount of difference in this between the IV cannulas. I'd use a pink one. Can't remember what gauge that is. I haven't been in nursing for 10 years now. But yeah, I'd use a pink one. I can remember the colours better than the gauges.
Okay. Andy asked, do we know why bats have higher requirement for calcium than other mammals?
I'm not sure of the answer for that one, to be honest. I think that their bone structure is slightly different to normal, to allow them to be so light and to be able to fly well. So I don't know if it's to do with that, but Lynn or John, do you know more?
During maternity season, sort of the mothers are producing a lot of milk. The pups need lots of calcium. They grow so rapidly, you know, from a baby to sort of an adult in a few months. Then they need the calcium just for the bone growth. But if that needs the same right the way through the year, then no, I don't know. I don't know the reason for it.
Yeah, I know that it is the same for, you know, say an adult male bat. You do need to give high calcium if you've got a pregnant mum in, definitely. And with the pups, the calcium, they're getting more calcium because they're getting the milk. But yeah, I don't know why an adult male pup would still, an adult male pip, for example, would be the same as in the terms of 33% more. I can try and find that out. I'll write that one out.
We can look that. Yeah. I know they don't absorb calcium very well from the mealworms, do they? So for a longer term bat, it's good to supplement.
Yeah.
Okay. Rachel has piped up saying that pink equals 20 gauge. So there we go.
Thank you.
Mary's asked, why do mealworms have to be decapitated? I think you answered in the chat, Lynn, but I think it's good to just vocalize it, and so it's for the recording as well. So why do mealworms have to be decapitated?
There's several reasons. One of which is if you've got a very weak bat and if it has an open wound, a live mealworm could actually bite on the bat, which wouldn't be a very good outcome. We find that it takes the bats a night or two to get used to the mealworms being the food item as well. So if you haven't got a bat that's wriggling around too much, if you decapitate it, it's more likely that the bat will be able to handle it and eat it. And then you can gradually move on to seeing if they'll take live ones after that. Also means that you don't have live mealworms crawling all around your net, which you might miss or the bat might miss, and then they'll pupate and you'll end up with beetles. It's not the end of the world, but it's just easier for monitoring what the bat's eating. And you don't want a live mealworm that's been in the net for a long time. It can chew a hole through a net, through some of the finer nets.
You've had that before, haven't you?
Yeah.
So it definitely can happen.
Kate has asked, I only tend to do bat care if the maternity roosters in our house have bats grounded in trouble. If I only have the bats for a couple of days, can I just use mealworms, or should I be getting the supplements for short-term care?
I would say it's always worth having it in. You know, if a bat has ended up in your care, like we say, it's not in the best condition, so we need to make sure that it's getting really good nutrition. Something like NutriGrub, I think is it about a year, Lynn, that it lasts?
Yes, it lasts quite a while once you opened it. It's only about £5 for a tub. So
yeah,
getting bags regularly, I agree. Obviously, just a one-off, you wouldn't worry about it. But if you're getting bats in, you may as well be gut loading the mealworms, and then you know that they're healthy worms to give to any bat that comes in for however long you might have it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I say, if it's only an outlay of £5 per year, then even if you've only got the bat for a couple of days, you still know that you've given it the best nutrition possible. So
lovely. Sorry, carry on.
I'll say some of the supplements that you buy from pet shops, they tend to be the ones that are designed for reptiles, so that's what you're looking for. But they can be really expensive. But we found a really good supplier that sells the NutriGrub. I think it's £5.30 for a decent sized tub. So we can send that around to people. Yeah.
Lovely. Burton asked, do you still use e-cover to clean bats after sticky paper?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Oh, sorry, sticky paper. Yeah, I was going to say it depends on what kind of contamination. E-cover is supposedly a good one because it's all natural and it hasn't got sort of nasty chemicals in it. Or Johnson's sort of baby bath, that sort of thing. So that's very gentle and mild. You can potentially just use a tiny drop of normal washing up liquid, but I would definitely favour one of the other two if available.
Excellent. I think Lynn also said sort of baby shampoo as well.
Yeah, Johnson's. Yeah, either baby bath or baby shampoo.
Lovely.
Yeah, I managed to want to clean a bat that had somehow fallen into an oil tank. I cleaned that head to toe in Johnson's baby shampoo, so I will stick by that and its ability. It cleaned it completely in about 4 days. So definitely stick by that if you can't get your hands on the Akuva stuff.
No pun intended.
Excellent. Andy has asked, how do you know when it is okay to keep multiple bats in a single mesh?
Shall I come in on that one?
Yep.
So we would normally keep bats separate because they need to be quarantined to minimise risk of passing on any parasites or disease. So you keep them in separate nets. So we'd only keep bats together if you decided that they're going to be bats or permanent bats. And then obviously, because bats are very sociable, it's much better if they've got another bat to roost with, or at least that choice. And we also kept multiple bats together this year because we were hand rearing the juveniles, so we were hoping that they would form, you know, new sort of colony, so they were roosting together, because they were going to be released together. But yeah, normally you would keep them separate.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that. This is the first year that we have really sort of put bats together because of the sheer numbers that we've had. And as we were saying before, the pups develop so quickly and there's so much that they need to learn. A bat in isolation, you have to question, is that going to be releasable? Is it going to have learned all of the social behaviours that it needs as well? So personally, normally I would want to isolate a bat for at least a couple of weeks to make sure that it hasn't got or doesn't start developing signs of anything wrong. But we broke that rule in terms of pups this week. Annette Faulkner, who I'm hoping is here or has been here today, she's the coordinator of the Lincolnshire Bat Group. And she sent me a really interesting article that she'd written saying that the development of pups, 1 week in a pup's life is the equivalent of 3 years in an adult's life, because they're releasable by the time they're at 6 weeks. So that's the equivalent of being 18. So the amount that they have to learn in that tiny space of time, you think the development that a baby to a 3-year-old would go through, like every day counts with juveniles. So yeah, we did get them in together quicker, as long as they were like looking healthy, behaving normally, that sort of thing. And then obviously you have to monitor them when you do the introductions to make sure that they're going to get along, because they don't always.
Okay. Alice has asked, does the legal limitations on euthanization only apply to using drugs to euthanize, or does it also apply to cervical dislocation?
Can you say that again, sorry?
Sorry. Does the legal limitations on euthanizing bats only apply to using drugs to euthanize, or does it also apply to cervical dislocation?
Oh, okay, cervical, sorry.
Cervical.
Yeah, no, I should.
Very different things.
So my dad's got problems with his back, and he kept saying that it was his cervix. It was very distressing. I'm not exactly sure which law it is that we're talking about there. Both methods of euthanasia are legal. The second one, it's something that I haven't done myself ever. And I would say, if I was ever going to consider to start doing it myself, I would want to be with somebody who is experienced and witness them doing it a few times before I would ever attempt it. But personally, I'm not sure that I could do the. For anyone that doesn't know, by the way, so if you're with euthanizing a bat, obviously you can do it through injection, or well, a vet can do it through injection. Another method is that you can sever the spinal cord, and you have to do that by putting a rod across putting the bat on a table or a hard surface face down, and you put a rod across the back of its neck and press down hard to dislocate the cervical discs, and you go through and sever the spinal cord. But if you get that wrong, that's not going to be pretty. So personally, I always favour going to the vets. Sometimes, you know, overall, if you're confident that you can do it and not mess it up, then it can be the kindest thing to do, because it's putting the animal out of suffering straight away. But you have to be really confident that you're going to get that right. I don't know if that answers your question, sorry, but do feel free to, again, message either now or back to the email address or something, if that doesn't answer your question.
Okay. Louise has asked, if we wanted to become a driver, would we start off doing rescues with someone else to see what to do, or would we be trained and sent on and be on our own straight away?
Honestly, it depends. Absolutely, we would like for you to be able to shadow somebody else. It's always the nicest way to learn. Obviously, with COVID at the moment, that does make it quite difficult. This season, we have had, like I say, completely new carers that have gone out to collect bats for us. But I've had conversations with them directly before they head out, and I get them up to speed with everything they need to know. And I make sure that I'm on the end of the phone so they can call me when they're on site and ask any questions they want. Again, you know, most people have got free video calls on WhatsApp or similar, so you know they can show me stuff, and I can assist remotely, as it were, or Lynn or I can.
Excellent. P. Jones has asked, in the case of juveniles, would you make habitats more natural, like using real branches and leaves and hollow logs?
Yeah, so this is, like I say, something that we're just starting to do. All of those things are great. I'm trying to be wary of what kind of complications we might encounter with this. I say that because when I was keeping gerbils and everything, they were saying don't just bring natural wood in because it could have parasites and that sort of thing. Obviously, we don't want to bring those sorts of things into an enclosure. So when I'm using wood, I am going to bake it in the oven first of all. There's different ways that you can make wood safe. You can soak it to drown everything, then dry it out, and then put it in the oven. That's the safest. That's sort of belts and braces. The other thing that I would be wary of is if you are going to use wood, make sure that it's not really, really fresh, because once you've chopped it, you don't want loads of sap coming out and them getting a sticky substance on them from that. So it is quite new, but yes, definitely. I've currently got a hibernation set up for bats, and it's got a big piece of wood in it that was actually intended for reptiles that was donated to us. Then I've got another big twisty branch. I've got little twigs that they're crawling over, and yeah, putting some leaves in and stuff would be good too. It's just familiarising them with what they're actually going to be encountering. Oh, and the other thing as well is, sorry, one last point is if you've got a big enough enclosure, or what NBG are hoping to do as well as scale it down the other way, obviously we want them to use bat boxes. So we're going to have, John's given me a bat box that I can open quite easily, and I'm going to be putting that onto a wooden stand and putting that inside the enclosure so they learn what a bat box looks like. And next time they do some making, John might make us some mini bat boxes specifically for going into meshes.
Lovely. The final question so far. So if anyone else got any other questions, add them to the chat now. Gina P has asked, can you dilute Hibi, spelled H-I-B-I?
Hibi scrub. Yeah, that would be absolutely fine. I would dilute it quite significantly, but I'm confident that Hibi scrub would be fine. I mean, you can, if you can use it on open wounds, you can use it on a sticky bat.
Excellent. This is your final chance to get some questions in, folks. Otherwise, I think we'll be calling it an evening. Gina has asked, how do you work out your dose rate for Batril?
For Batril, so it's basically the same for any bat. So when it comes to drugs, everything that we use is off license. There's nothing specifically designed for bats. So it's not make it up as we go along. It's more that we're learning as more care happens. If you go to a vet that isn't experienced with bats, then they are very likely to say, just give it the tiniest drop that you can. We found that still a massive overdose. And so I know you're asking about Batril, but if you don't mind, I'll broaden the question out a little bit. So say something like Metacam, if you're just giving it like a drop, you can only really use it for a few days. before you've got to start worrying about liver and kidney function. What we now do, we've had this passed down from very experienced bat vet, is we dilute, it's the same for Bactriol and for Metacam, because it's still probably quite an overdose for the size of the bat. You're drawing up 0.1 of a mil, 0.01 of a mil of the drug, making it up to 0.1 of a mil with water, giving it a good shake, and then you're drawing out a single drop with the micropipettes that we're using, and you give it that. That is how low the dose is. I don't expect you to have caught all of that. I can go through that again privately, but yeah, I mean, obviously, Gino, I know that you're a vet nurse, so I know that if you were using it, that would be under a vet supervision. But the reason I didn't really involve drug doses today is because I didn't really want people just going off and doing that by themselves. So yeah, just that disclaimer again of make sure that anything you're using is prescribed by a vet.
Okay, got a question from Louise. Are drivers allowed to go to a rescue together as long as COVID restrictions allow?
Sorry, say that again. I was reading one of the chat comments.
Are drivers allowed to go to a rescue together as long as COVID restrictions allow?
Yes. So if you went in separate vehicles, or if you're both from the same household, you can go in the same vehicle. But yeah, different drivers could go to the same one if you know you want to learn that way. Like you say, just observe social distancing rules when you're there. But absolutely, if you want to shadow a driver.
Lovely. That is all the questions, unless anyone's got something final to add.